In this video, we're going to work on the ALEKS problem called Understanding that Opposite Charges Attract and Like Charges Repel. This problem is telling us the net electric force acting on each of the three objects below is sketched as a green arrow. So here we have three objects. I'm just going to call them object number 1, number 2, number 3. Each of these spheres represents an object. And it's telling us that the electric force acting on each of these three objects is sketched as a green arrow. What the heck, Alex? I do not have any green arrows at all. This was the first one of these problems that I got, and I was super confused because there are no green arrows, but we're going to keep reading. So it says, for example, if the green arrow points to the left, the object feels an electric force pushing it to the left. Now, here's where the important part is. If there is no green arrow, the object feels no net electric force. Okay, so we have a situation here where all three of these objects are not feeling an electric force. This is kind of a trick question, Alex. We're going to actually come back to this. Let's look at one that looks a little bit more normal. Look at this problem. This one's more normal. So here we have our three objects, 1, 2, 3, and we can see the green arrows representing the electric forces that are acting on each of these three objects. Now we know that opposite charges attract, which means if we're thinking about it in terms of the green arrows, opposite charges attract. That means that objects are pulled towards each other. Their green arrows are going to be pointing towards each other. So we know that objects number 1 and number 2, because they are pointing towards each other, they have opposite charges. Whatever the charge is on this object, the charge on object number 2 is opposite. And we also know that like or the same, we say like, but the same charge, similar charges, identical charges, repel. So if we have two objects that have the same charge, those objects' arrows are going to be pointing in opposite directions. And that's the situation that we have for objects 2 and 3. These two objects, because their arrows point in opposite directions, these objects have the same charge or a like charge. Now it is telling us there may be more than one correct answer to the problem. There's more than one way that we can answer this problem, this particular problem. We know that objects 2 and 3 have the same charge. They are either both positive or they are both negative. There's no way for us to know if they're both positive or if they're both negative, and this is what Alex is referring to in terms of there being more than one correct answer. Let's just say, just for the sake of saying it, that both of these objects have a positive charge. Now the way that you're going to plug that into ALEKS is that you're going to click on this plus and then you're going to click here, and that's going to turn this circle into the plus sign, and you're going to do the same thing for this. We know that objects 2 and 3 have the same charge. And we also know that objects 1 and 2 have opposite charges because they're attracted. So that means just based on how we're setting this up, object number 1 has a negative charge. Now, I do want to point out that we could have approached this differently. We could have said that objects 2 and 3 were both negatively charged, and object number 1 is positively charged, and ALEKS is going to accept either one of those as the correct answer. So let's look at another version of this problem. Here we have this one right here. We've got two objects that are attracted to each other. We know that that means because they're attracted to each other, that means that they have opposite charges. One of them is positive, one of them is negative, and it's not going to matter which one we choose to be the positive and which one we choose to be the negative. This little guy over here has no arrow associated with it at all. That means that it is neither positive nor negative. And we've got this button over here that we're going to use to indicate an object that is neutral, not charged. So you're going to click on this, and then you're going to click over there, and it is just going to put that 0 inside the circle to indicate that there's no charge on that object. Now that is the only option for this object. It has to be 0. So now let's go back to that first problem that ALEKS gave me when I was looking at it and thinking, what is going on? All of these objects, or I should say none of these objects, have green arrows associated with them, which means that they all have to be neutral, every one of them.